Inconceivable!
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
Welcome to the Cheap Seats and Stickman podcast.
Hello again. Welcome back to the newest edition of Cheap Seats and the Stickman podcast. I am Jason Burgos. He is Jose Maldonado. How are you feeling today, Jose?
I am feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling patriotic. How about you, sir? How are you?
That's the feeling for a lot of people. And that's a good segue because our show is going to be a bit patriotic. It's going to be a bit political. We're taking a step away into a more serious environment than we
Yeah,
usually, do.
and Jay, if I could just stop you really quick. We are recording this on a very special date, so to all the veterans out there, please, happy Veterans Day, and thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate you,
Yep,
bro.
likewise. It's we felt the need, and I think a lot of people felt the need to voice our, opinions and discuss the events of Tuesday and Election Day, and the Hail Mary shocking, 5 second, finale
Dude pulled the
shocker.
Elway, man. He did
Yeah.
the drive. He
Yeah,
really did.
so, I mean, along with talking about, our new editor, excuse me, a new commander-in-chief, Donald Trump being president, we're going to talk about things like that. We're going to talk about the whole, what went wrong, the whole shebang on everything about it. Also, at the end of the show, we're going to have a little bit of a palate cleanser, a little MMA talk, because UFC 205 is this weekend, actually tomorrow, or for whoever might be listening to it. It might be today, it might have been yesterday, but we're going to talk about that. I actually had the luxury to talk to American top team striking coach Dr. Paul Gavoni. He's coming on. He's going to give us a little analysis of the Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez main event. So that'll be a little more fun talk away from the serious talk. And then me and Jose will talk a little bit about the big show in Madison Square Garden, since we are two native New Yorkers and it's a big deal for this to happen.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, this has been a long time coming, and Paulie's been a guest on the show before. For anybody who hasn't heard the previous episode, please look that up. Really knowledgeable dude, great guest, and look forward to hearing his analysis on 205, man.
So I mean, I'll throw it to you. What were your feelings and opinions and thoughts? I'd like to get you to give me a thought process. Starting from like, did you heavily follow, the night and the proceedings and how everything went throughout the night, or did you kind of just wait more towards the end and you saw the results, or to the next day?
I did. I pretty much came home around 6 or 7 ish, and cut on the TV and just pretty much followed the election the whole night. Wasn't awake for the actual result because I mean it was like about 3 in the morning when Hillary called Trump to concede. So it wasn't until the next morning that I found out officially that Trump was our commander in chief. So, but I was following it throughout the night, and just this realization, this slow realization that kind of set in as the night was going on. Because to be perfectly honest, I didn't expect it to go his way, and this whole time I was thinking to myself, there's no way this can actually happen. It's like I've been telling myself that for the past 18 months, right from when he declared that he was actually running. I was like, all right, this is gonna flame out, and it never did. And here we are on election night, and he's just getting more and more of the electoral votes. He's just piling it on and piling it on. I'm like, this is actually happening. I was speechless. I really was. I This was not the result I was expecting. This was not the man I was supporting, and I really just kind of went numb. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to feel, man. I'm not sure. How did you go on election night? How were you following it?
This is one of those elections that and I'm not hugely into politics, but I followed this one really closely, and I was into it pretty early on, from like 6 or 7. And the crazy thing about this election, I think most elections are kind of studied after the fact because everybody wants to know how the end result occurred. But this one's going to be really studied, and all the statistics that come out have been coming out since that day, and things like how she lost millennials and African Americans in the vote. The one big takeaway that's actually going to change a sort of an industry, a niche industry, is how all of these pollsters and all of these polls had her winning. I mean, you had analysts going on the radio. I did not hear many analysts say, "Oh yeah, I think he has a good chance. It's 50-50." Most were she's going to win, and even some were saying she's probably going to win big. So to completely get it wrong, and for honestly, he pretty much won big. I mean, he won, dominantly in the end, and to have it been so wrong was the biggest shock. And around like 7, 8, maybe around there, and when you see him taking the lead, and then when the lead started building, I won't lie. I mean, I'm sure not everybody will agree with this, and I actually got a little nauseous because I mean that legitimately, it bothered me. I was like, oh, like the realization this is an extreme possibility, and when it actually started looking likely, it bothered me like to my core. Like it upset me, and it just was stunning. And I mean, this.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how you feel, man. Because I mean, it like just for an example, I've been following this election, pretty much all the way up, with my dad, kind of talking about it, and my dad was of the opinion that yeah, this whole thing was kind of a joke, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, Trump can't be serious, right? And as that, like you said, as that lead kept building, we kind of stopped laughing.
Yeah,
It was like, wait, this is actually happening, and in his mind, he really thought that this was not possible. You know what I mean? Just with the things that he said, with his track record, the type of person that he's been made out to be, the type of person that he's proven himself to be, on many occasions, there was no way in his mind that this man could actually go ahead and win the election. And I was of the same mindset. So to see him building that steady lead, to see the joke kind of not be a joke anymore, it just kind of set in that this is the reality we're going to have to face for the next 4 years. And not to say that Hillary was the best candidate. We weren't exactly rooting for Hillary. We just thought to ourselves, are we really going to put the fate of the country into this man's hands?
yeah,
And when it actually started happening, and the next morning waking up and seeing the news that yeah, that Donald Trump is president elect, Hillary has conceded, and Obama's setting up plans to transition. What was there to say at that point? It was I was pretty much speechless and just trying to figure out, trying to get answers as to how this happened and what was the mindset of the voters who actually supported them, and if not, how did it, how do we let it slip through our fingers?
yeah. And to add to the pollsters getting it wrong, I mean, more clues that people really thought it was going to go her way is one. And I watched CNN, I watched MSNBC during it, and a lot of people, the analysts were saying they talked to people in the Trump campaign, and some of the words they were using were like miracle for the likely
Yeah.
chance for him to win. And another clue is if you saw, Hillary Clinton was doing her, her party or her whatever in the Jacob Javits Center. So for the people that haven't been to Jacob Javits Center that might be listening to this, that's a major convention center. That's where they
Oh yeah.
do New York Comic Con, which is a huge event now. While Donald was just doing his sort of in a ballroom in like a hotel, like he almost had that I'm going to lose, why am I going to spend the money kind of setup.
Right.
And to see them talk about how there was a party atmosphere in the Javits Center early, everybody's excited, and then by a certain point it became really down, and everybody was sitting down, and it's so much hindsight. Like before I even get to like we talk about things like why maybe what went wrong and what went right for him. I just wanted to go back and think about why people made this decision, and you know it, you go back to the issues, and her issues being, Benghazi. That's the oldest one, and the
Hmm.
Benghazi thing it's an unfortunate thing. She made a poor decision that for the people that have didn't follow it closely. There was an American embassy in Benghazi, Libya. This is when Libya were really starting in the beginning stages of going into full-on revolution by the people, and she got warning documents and messages about adding more security and maybe taking the Americans out. And in the end, it was partially her decision to not make those moves. And in the end, people ended up dying because
Mm.
of the revolution going on. And it got to that area where the embassy was at. Then you have the emails, which for the email story, she was using the server. She had emails that that possibly using that work related when they wanted to work with some of the documents. Her administrative people gave them 30,000. There's another 30,000 that they deleted, saying it was personal stuff, and then she wiped the server. It's very sketchy. It's very questionable. But in the end, when the FBI investigates you twice and they can't find anything, what is there left to say about it?
Yeah, of course, it's interesting you bring up the emails because that seemed to be the smoking gun that Trump kept presenting leading up to election day. He kept bringing up the emails, kept pounding that point home. And when the FBI, when the director of the FBI went on record saying that, yes, we've reviewed the emails and it does not change our ruling, he kept at it. He kept picking away at it, picking away at it, and I wonder if that had, I mean, I don't really wonder, it had to have had an effect on people's perception on possibly Hillary, and this election might have swayed a few votes, just thinking that the point driven home about Hillary being part of the system, part of the same old kind of regime that would cover up something like this. Maybe that swayed people into voting to the other side. It's just a theory. It might have been
Yeah, I mean,
some people's mindset.
and for it to be reopened days away from the election, yeah, it was like it was the last thing. It was like landing, excuse me, like landing a big shot in a fight in the
Right.
last minute. That's what the judges remember. It's one of those things. Even if it wasn't effective and it didn't knock the person down, it didn't knock her down because there was nothing to it. It was the lasting memory. And another thing that's also brought up, because the whole campaign, and this is, I definitely want to talk about this, but the Trump campaign brilliantly did such a clever and smart job of bringing her down to his level. That was the game plan. Bring her
Yeah.
down into the mud so that they look even in terms of just dirt and despicable looking people. And one of the things I've often brought up, I've had relatives who had an issue with my views on it, bringing up calling Bill Clinton a pedophile. The reason why Bill Clinton is considered a pedophile is because he's connected to a billionaire businessman, Jeffrey Epstein, who used to run party boats and party airplanes trips with underage girls and strippers and prostitutes and all that kind of stuff. And it was a
Mm.
frat house atmosphere. And Bill Clinton was he it confirmed that he was on some of those boats and on some of those trips. Also, though, Donald Trump has been a friend of this same man who, might I add, is a convicted pedophile in jail. He's been friends with this man for decades, and they have quotes of him saying he's a heck of a guy and a good friend. So for anybody, for one, if they're gonna complain about Bill, which I don't know what the husband has anything to do with the person that's actually running the country, it has nothing to do
Right.
with the other. That if you're complaining about that, the person you may have voted for is also friends with this same pedophile, and there's an ongoing issue of a woman who has made claims about, at 13 he might have sexually assaulted or raped her. That's something out there too. Again, rumor, but still, the fact is he's a friend of this guy. So, in to my mind, that kind of in a way evens things out, and I don't understand the issue. But that's her biggest flaws, and that's her biggest problems with her.
Right.
Now, I made a list of the issues with Donald Trump. Would you like to
Is this a
go through the
hysterical
list?
list?
Oh no, it's hysterical, but it's that you want to cry hysterical in a
Oh,
bad way.
that's fantastic.
Let's go through this list of interesting things about our new commander in chief. Well, one very popular one, he made fun of a disabled New York Times reporter on a rally. That's
And I'm
what's
sure everybody's seen those clips repeatedly on those commercials that have been airing.
which he
It's pretty much,
which
yeah.
he also denied in the third debate that he never did that. Yet amateur fact checkers called him out on it like within seconds on Twitter with videos of him doing it. Um, he also talks about rounding up illegal citizens and deporting them, namely Mexicans or South Americans that are illegally crossing the border, which is scary because like, are we gonna get V for Vendetta and we're gonna have the black bag men coming to pick up women and children in the middle of the night and taking them across the border? Like, is this what we're
Yeah,
gonna get?
it does not paint a pretty picture. I mean, a lot of people are saying that it's blown out of proportion. Well, but think about it though. If the seed is planted, who's to stop that tree from growing?
Yeah, and let's continue to move on. He made a point of it in the debates, often talking about, oh, we can continue to give, safety to other nations with our, with the bases we have in other nations and protecting them. and they have to pay their fair share. So he pretty much wants to run a mafia-style protection racket across the globe, not understanding there's probably purposes we have these relationships with them, and assuming, yes, America, we do relationships for free, and we have no benefit in them, obviously, because if we're not getting money, we have no other benefit. There's like strategic benefits, or locale, or maybe trading, because those are wouldn't hit his brain, that kind of stuff. Um, another popular one. I mean, you know, he's a sexual assaulter. He loves the ladies, even when he's a married man. Um, Another one of my favorites is he may not have paid taxes in a couple of decades.
Just a couple. That's all. And I'm guessing this goes back to the small loan of $1 million he got when he was younger.
Oh no, $14 million he got.
Oh, excuse
Not
me.
even
Settle.
14 million. The taxes thing goes back to, I don't know if you saw it. The new well, of course, one, even though it's an unofficial rule of running for president, you give your tax returns. He never did. The New York Times, maybe a month or two ago, got his 1995 for tax returns, where he claimed a loss of $900 million, and because of the tax code, because he claimed that loss, he would be able to not pay taxes for a long period of time that could have even been up to the present day. So a guy that is talking about helping the forgotten people, he hasn't been paying taxes to help those forgotten people for a long time.
Yeah.
To go along with sexual assaulting, obviously if he's sexual assaulting, he's messing around with his wife. I mean, he's now married 3 times.
Yeah, which,
So,
if the issue ever comes up about, a big issue with LGBT is obviously same-sex marriage and the sanctity of marriage, the purity of marriage. How is this man who's been thrice
yes.
married, has
Yes.
had, come on now. His first marriage to Ivana was, highly publicized divorce. And, in his womanizing ways, his track record. How can we take any point he has on that
Yeah.
seriously?
Which also further makes the evangelicals that love him and support him even more ridiculous.
Exactly. That's what they're pointing to. Christian values. Take a good look at this
Yes,
man. Take
yes,
a good look at this man's track record. Take the blinders off. I understand that you're pulling right because you're pulling right, but don't bring up Christian values. Don't bring up things like that when you have this man who is vehemently guilty of breaking the moral code repeatedly.
yes.
Don't bring him up as your candidate and say, all right, this is the man that we're supporting. This man has proven time and time again that he is questionable at
Yep.
best. So don't bring up those moral code. Don't bring up the moral code. Do him a favor and don't repeatedly bring that up because it's hypocrisy and it's not going to hold up.
Now, this is my favorite part. Now, he is a reality TV star.
Yeah,
He is a WWE Hall of Famer.
that's
And
hilarious, and I'm sure WWE will play that up eventually.
yes, and he's also been on the receiving end of a Stone Cold Stunner. Now, if The Rock had run the presidency and he has all those things, I'd go, you know what, that's pretty cool. The Rock's president. He also did that. No, with this guy, it just makes it further of a joke that he's a president.
Yeah,
President and WWE Hall of Famer. Thanks, everybody, for that one.
yeah.
He's
Yeah,
openly.
it's one thing for Ronald Reagan, a former actor, to
Yes,
become
yes,
president.
yes,
That's one thing. That's fine, dude. I
yes.
acted with a chimpanzee on camera. That's fine. That's whatever. But this is a whole new level
Yeah,
of, and not to put down WWE, but I wouldn't exactly vote, Stone Cold Steve Austin. No, I take that back. Stone Cold would be an awesome president.
yeah,
Actually, now
that's
that I think
true.
about
That
it.
is true. You're right.
But no, you hit it right on the head, man. I mean, this is a man with no political experience who's a reality star, and it just goes to show it speaks volumes of the culture in this country about
Yes.
putting certain celebrities up on a pedestal, and this is
Yeah.
the highest pedestal that it goes in this country. So
Now, here's another one. He openly spoke about Muslims having to register for a special identification system, or maybe even getting ID cards for them, because that makes a ton of sense, and that's not discriminatory at all. Because the kind of they're all the same kind of attitude that's presenting. Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a unifying kind of idea and concept right there. That's a good one.
oh, absolutely, and is it just me, or does giving Muslims an ID number kind of strike you as familiar?
Yeah.
I remember a certain class of citizen getting numbers tattooed on their forearms back
Yeah,
in the day.
a guy with a little mustache,
A
nice little
little bit.
haircut.
Not to say it'll go in that direction, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
there's similarities, and this is that really the message we want to be sending?
Here's
Is
here's
that really the message we want to be sending?
here's another one. The man. Now this is one of the things that upset me the most. That we had another country purposely undermine our election and help one side by hurting the other, and this guy, our new president, has a relationship with the head of that country, and they won't be punished or be hurt in any way, and it'll just all be forgotten about. And
Of
that
course.
is unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean it's a double standard. It really is. There's a lot of that going on. It was a lot of it going on leading up to this election. There's a lot of it going on with the reaction to this election, man. It's like people want to forget certain things that are in plain sight just to excuse or justify his selection as president. So
And I'll just go through the last few ones so we can move on to we got a lot of other stuff, good stuff to talk about. But, we're going to talk about repealing Obamacare, which is a joke, but we'll get to that. That's another one of the things. He wants to rip up the Iranian nuclear deal, which is extremely dangerous. Trump University, all I got to say about that. And the man has never donated to his own charity and actually has taken out of his charity's coffers to pay for things like court bills and a portrait of himself, which is always lovely.
oh,
I
that's a
wish I could have a portrait of myself too.
real classy move there, bro.
But so now, like, I want to talk a little bit about what do you think are some of the things that Hillary did wrong and were reason for why things possibly went the way they did?
Well, right off the bat, she came off, at least to me and some people that I've talked to, as disingenuous. Kind of a tryhard, you know.
Yes.
You see certain things where she's just trying to fit in with certain things. When case in point, when Pokemon Go came out, she was like, "Why can't they just Pokemon Go to the polls? Stop, please stop." There's pictures of her dabbing. There's,
Yeah.
it's
And that just shows
it
you taking pictures with celebrities and popular people, it doesn't do anything. Because I think I heard a stat on NPR today that I think they said 51% of millennials went out and voted for Obama in 2012. 19% went out and voted this time. So
yeah.
getting in cahoots with the cool people, for
Mhm.
the kids, that it does nothing. Donald Trump had no one supporting him.
No.
No celebrity other than Dana White, and he's just a greedy SOB, but he does what he does well. But he had no celebrities. He had no backing on the level. He had all of them hating him, and it made no difference. So shaking hands and glad-handing celebrities, you might as well just cut it out. It makes no real difference. The kids
And
don't care. It doesn't sway them one bit.
absolutely, and it's interesting you mentioned that because Dana White was probably one of the few celebrities that came out publicly in
Yeah.
support of Trump. But that's the whole thing. I'm 100% sure there was a lot more, but it goes to show the character of this man, where they were not as willing to publicly declare that they were backing this man
Yeah.
in fear
Yeah.
of the backlash for their own personal businesses or careers or whatever it may be. That should speak volumes to people that his own supporters were out in droves the way Hillary supporters were. It was almost like they were ashamed of some of the things that he'd done in the past.
And I
Go
think
figure
that
that.
affected the polls. I think, and they talked about a little bit, on CNN too, during the election, how these pollsters got it wrong because so many people probably maybe answered by saying, "Oh, I'll vote Hillary," or undecided, or maybe didn't want to answer at all, knowing they were going to vote for him, which is makes me it just blows my mind that you're ashamed and embarrassed to admit you're going to vote for him, but then you're
No?
going to go vote for him.
Yeah,
What is wrong with you?
it's amazing how this came out. But no, you're right on that. And just going back to a little bit what we were talking about with Hillary. Uh, take a look at Obama. Obama during his 8 years did a lot of things that presidents don't normally do. If I'm not mistaken, he was the first one to have an active Twitter account.
Uh-huh.
Um, he came out on Ellen's talk show. Did the talk show circuit. That
Yeah.
wasn't something that was really done before. He kind of that's one of the reasons that the millennials were on board for Obama, because he did it in an organic way.
Yeah.
He kind of seemed like he knew what he was doing. Whereas with Hillary, it seems like someone was whispering in her ear saying, "Hey,
Yes.
this is what's cool with the kids right now. Let's try this."
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she was just kind of trying to play catch up, and it came off wrong. It seemed like she was just dishonest, and
Yeah.
that's a big no when you're running for office.
And even if she did all these things with the the best of intentions and legitimately was behind us, yeah, it felt like she was following a common playbook, and it just came off as disingenuous, and it hurt her. And that kind of goes to one of my points on what went wrong, is that it's a two-pronged reason here. One, the first reason affects the second reason. One is that, and I should have thought about this, and then the stat was out there, and I just kind of didn't think about it because I was just assuming he was just so ridiculous, no one would really vote for him. But the stat is, in the history of presidential elections and campaigns, whenever one party has had the presidency for two terms in a row, never does that party keep it for a third. It always switches. So there's something about
Mm.
society where they just need to switch. Even if things are going good, they need a change. That group that's not a part of that party and unhappy, they force a change. Knowing that, they made a strategical fail big time by purposely backing her wholeheartedly and undermining Bernie Sanders.
Oh man, and in hindsight, the election was lost at that point.
Yeah.
If
Because
you
they
really
lost the
look at it,
millennials with that. So many of them, even if
absolutely.
they the issues that they looked at it, they would have probably agreed with. They were done. They already turned the TV off to it, so to speak, for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Bernie was and continues to be the millennial choice. And if he had run as the Democratic candidate, he in all likelihood would have beaten Donald Trump. I mean, that's hearsay and conjecture, but
Yeah.
Bernie was a more popular choice, and you could tell that there was kind of a backlash to Hillary because of that. There's a lot of people that were that, and they did still vote for Bernie. There was a lot of write-in votes for Bernie and also for Harambe and Hennessy, but I don't even want to touch that. But this country, it cracks me up.
And a
But
certain wrestler voted for himself. Woo!
oh, the Nature Boy. Why does that not surprise me? And it's probably not the first time either. This guy. Ah,
Ooh.
bro, but yeah, it's there was Bernie backlash for sure on Hillary, yeah, and it showed. It was just one of the many factors I'm sure that led to her downfall.
And that's the thing, because of what they did, and when it got, see, if it's one thing, if he beat her and people are butthurt about that, but no, when it got out that the DNC, the Democratic National Committee helped
Right,
her and were in cahoots with her to
right.
undermine him, when that got out there officially, and then you got the I forgot her first name, but Brazil, who was the head of the commission, I mean committee, and that she was feeding her debate questions, because she had, ties with CNN from working there. All these kind of things, like she was getting help and kind of cheating. It further hurt her. And this is where the second part comes in. If you're going to try to be different and try to make history by having a party retain the presidency for three terms in a row, again, they made a fatal error. And I understand it on a level, but they probably should have understood by clearly making it seem like this was going to be President Obama 2.0. They were going to continue on what he did, and it was a status quo. And that's the worst thing. If you're going to try to make history and change things, which already is likely to happen, you have to be completely different.
Yeah, you
The
really do.
status quo no one wanted, especially on the Republican side, but even Democrats were some were unhappy with that. So Bernie would have been, if they had a chance to win, he would have been a humongous, switch from the status quo. But by her being the same way, and then him going out and campaigning her, which I can't, blame her. If you're gonna get a brilliant man like him and his wife go out there campaigning for you, of course you want it. But that turned people off too. They don't want him again for a lot of people. So anybody that was undecided, who were Republican, that maybe didn't even want to vote for him, but still hated Obama, they ended up voting for him for that reason.
Yeah, you're right, man. And on the Democratic side, those that didn't like Hillary, they kind of saw her as instead of Obama 2.0, she came off as Obama light.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah.
they were going to turn that off, and even for you know there were let's be honest here. As popular as Obama was as president, not everyone was on board with Obama. So she's going to continue, like you said, if
Yep.
she's going to continue on like Obama was, that's going to turn some people off too because they got
Yep.
8 years of that. They weren't looking for another four.
Exactly. I mean, another thing that I think they made a mistake in is that they, as we all saw, at the end, well, I don't know if I think you follow it, but the real turning point were those set of states: the Michigan, the Wisconsin, the Ohio, the Pennsylvania. Those, what's known as the Rust Belt, was a huge decider, and they were most of them were Democratic strongholds for the last few elections. I mean, some of them, as far as even Pennsylvania, I think has been Democratic since 88, 88 or 90. I think it was 88.
I
You
think it
know,
was 88. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, so to assume it seemed like her campaign assumed they were going to get that. They could go in there and talk a little bit and just keep, the connection, but assuming they were going to go in there and then pushing hard in states like Texas and Arizona, think they were going to switch them from their normal. And from what, when watching the coverage, people within this really clever campaign Trump had, they focused on those states. They knew, they had more confidence in that middle America was not going to change, and it didn't change one bit. But they made
No,
a strategic focus to go into the Rust Belt and try to get that vote, and they did. They switched these states that you would never think would jive with what this guy's doing or a Republican concept, and they changed it, man. Like the numbers for what she got compared to what Obama got in the same areas with such a stark contrast. I mean, like it's surprising when you look at the two candidates. Your common sense knows who should win, but and that's where you got to give a lot of credit to Trump, and hopefully, this shows in who he chose as a cabinet. He chose the right people, and these people
right.
ran a brilliant campaign that helped him win. While on Hillary's side, they ran a faulty campaign and just helped her lose.
Yeah, I really think with Hillary's campaign, I don't want to say they were resting on their laurels, but they probably thought what we were all thinking, that there's no way anybody's going to take Trump seriously.
Yeah.
And you know what? They underestimated the support that he would get, and it showed. Like, Pennsylvania was a big key. That surprised the hell out of me. That Pennsylvania ended up going in Trump's favor. Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of other places like that where I'm sure Hillary's camp thought that they had it in the bag, and once they started to turn the other way, there was no going back because, like you said, they didn't go out and get those other territories the way that Trump went out and got hers.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, talking about like what he did so well. I mean, their campaign did so many things. I was thinking about this yesterday, and we all know when we have political campaigns, they have the slogans. Those slogans and those mottos they say at every
Make America great
rally.
again.
Yeah. Now, most of the time they're corny, and not to say Trump's were spectacular. His is all corny, but they worked. They
Yeah,
made sense, and when you're hammering them home, they make sense. And there's three in particular that work so well. As you just mentioned, make America great. For those people out there that were disillusioned with the Obama, um, tenure and his time in office, the Obama administration, they are looking. Oh man. Even though my brain and facts say, oh, things are better, the economy's stronger, less people on healthcare, less people on unemployment, but I'm not happy with this. This is not what I want. They need to make it great again, and that connected with a lot of people, notably middle class white males and even white females, hugely, and it worked. It made them think of a world that they knew before, that they were happy with, unfortunately, pre African American president. For those racists out there, the world before that they were much happier with, and he gave them a notion of going back to that. Along with that slogan, Crooked Hillary hammering that home, and then having the scandals she had, having things constantly out there, it worked. It continued to put her in the muck, in the yuck with him, and made him
yeah,
look like an equal.
yeah, and it showed very much so in the debates. You can see that a lot, where it was like Hillary was trying to take the high road,
Yeah.
at least the best that she could, and Trump kept picking at her and picking at her to the point where this really became a squabble. I mean, the debates, at least to me, the debates were damn near unwatchable.
No.
I would get them in 5 minute snippets, and I was like, I can't watch this bickering. I cannot.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
And the third slogan that really worked too is, and I think it was more in the last couple of months of the campaign, drain the swamp.
Yeah,
Drain the swamp. For for a lot of people that really were behind him, it was because he was not a career politician. He was just a businessman. He was completely different than these politicians that no one trusts, and they feel that their vote doesn't matter because the lobbyists are in their ear and in their pockets anyway. So he was a different guy from them. So by saying, I'm gonna go there and change everything and get rid of all the politics and the BS, and that term, drain the swamp, because if Washington was heavily a swamp, DC, before got turned into a fantastic civilization. So that it worked on a metaphoric level, in a colorful way, and again, smart slogan. While on her side, love trumps hate is
Mm.
corny as all holy moly. I get it. It's smart in a way, and it's a nice thought, but it's corny. It's something, your grandma says or your auntie says, and that
Yeah.
in a campaign that was full of dirt fury, that wasn't enough.
Yeah, and two little points on that I think also helped Trump. Were like you mentioned with Hillary. And one thing that I got to give to Trump, that he mentioned that Hillary was running those kind of mudslinging campaigns before he was. From what I can tell, she was. I didn't see a whole lot of, I mean, I saw, I heard whole lot of bearing of Hillary through his speeches, but in terms of like the advertisements and things like that, I did see the Hillary mudslingers before I saw Trump's,
Mhm.
and I kind of saw Trump's kind of pick up closer to the election day, so I can kind of concede that to him.
Well, I will
Oh,
say this though: the reason that you may have saw that is just because she actually had a lot more funding than him.
yeah, you're right.
She had, I don't know, like almost two times more than him, so she could afford to put way more commercials that you would see than he would. And that was a big effect to it too. That's another story in this whole thing. He made history by being a president that wasn't in politics, wasn't in the military, and also did not have a ground game, which is unheard of in anything so major. He had a ground game, probably very small, very minimal. Usually you need a national level and all those little people in all those little towns and cities, pushing your message again. Of course, he had none of that because he had the media, do millions of dollars worth of media and coverage and publicity for him. So he didn't even need a ground game. Like, this is why this election will be studied for generations, because it's stunning how these
Yeah.
things worked and how it changed the game on so many levels in a
Oh yeah,
bad
Trump.
way.
Yeah, Trump. Yeah, but yeah, Trump broke all the rules, man. And one other thing that I will give him is that when you mentioned drain the swamp, he even as so much said in one of his speeches that when he first heard it, he thought it was kind of corny, didn't like it as much. But when he started to think about it more, it was appropriate, and so he embraced it. Again, just a little honest touch there. And for all I know, he might have been again, typical Trump blowing smoke, but
Yeah, yeah.
he he kind of there were moments like that where he was true to what his supporters said, that he was just candid. He was a little more upfront with his supporters, the way you can never really you kind of had to take what Hillary was saying with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Whereas Trump, for better or worse, spoke his mind and was just almost, I don't want to say honest, he's not, but he was he kind of kept it real, and just little touches like that. I think they ingratiated them a little bit more with his supporters, and maybe swayed a few more supporters his way.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that he did, and well, not anything he did, but the thing that scares me about all of this, it scared me about the campaign, and it scares me about him, being a president, is as a person that's a student journalist and working my way to be a professional journalist, there's
Oh, come
already,
on, now you're being modest. You're getting there, man. You're getting there.
as a person, the media is completely changed now. The purpose of the media back in the days of Edward R. Murrow and everything like that were to serve the public. Back then, organizations and these conglomerates did not mind losing money on the news department because it was serving a civic duty, and it's completely gone. Now
Yeah,
news is more
sadly.
about getting clicks and getting hits because they're trying to make a profit. It was once not for profit, and the fact that the way the media covered him in such a scandalous kind of tabloid way just to get ratings, not really covering truly the issues and really calling him on and stuff. But now that we're going to have a president that gets into a Twitter beef at 3 in the morning over the most worthless critiques, what is the industry going to be like? How neutered could this industry come? And it scares me as a person going into the industry how it's going to continue to go in the wrong direction, and it's so unfortunate. And that's the thing, the media is there to inform the public, and with less sources that people are trusting, and then when he himself hammers the media, demonizes it, so many people don't trust it, so people end up going to the internet, trusting that, and there's probably 80% of the blogs that are just biased garbage that they're reading this thinking this is genuine stuff because it jives with what they're thinking, and we continue to down spiral into this a completely misinformed populace where we're going to make more humongous decisions like this in the future.
Yeah, and it's just a sad state of affairs. And you hit it on the head. One of the big problems now is that not only are the news sources less reliable, there's so many of them. There's
Yeah.
just so many, so many websites, so many blogs, so many voices out there on the internet that people will pick up two or three and run with it, where those two or three might have been completely misinformed.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you go on Facebook and you still see joke sites being shared as if they're serious. I mean, I don't
Yes.
know how many times McDonald's has been ready to discontinue the Big Mac according to many sources. It's like at the bottom of the page it says this is a satire site, but
Yes.
people still report it as fact. So there's a lot of people out there not doing the research, not taking the time to read all the way through, and just taking a little bit of information and running with it like it's gospel. It's not.
Yeah.
And there's so much of that it's so hard to weed through what's scandalous and just looking for clicks and get to the real meat and potatoes of what's actually happening, that it's going to be really scary going forward.
And what social media is the best and worst thing. We all know the positives of it, but on the news level, it's a good thing because you get your news feed, you get the news you're interested in, the sites you have, you can follow them on Facebook, so you can get stories. Maybe almost easier and getting everything at once instead of going to each site and looking for them. It's
Right.
bad though in that you it's all set up for your personal bias, which I myself am guilty of. I want to see stuff that has like-minded, and that's the difference in news coverage now more than ever, because everybody gets their news from there, and then everybody has their bias instead of going to news sources. And then even if they want to go to legitimate news sources, certain news sources are leaning in one direction or the other, and that's the difference between news back now and then. And that's what news was always about, giving an unbiased perspective on things. You have to hear both sides. Even if you don't like it, you need to hear both sides because you need to know both point of views to make an informed opinion. And people aren't doing that. They're hearing their side. They're hearing what they want to hear. They're shutting off the rest. And the rest is, as the more they do that, the rest doesn't really make sense to what they want. So it's not truthful. It's lies and it's wrong. And you
Yeah.
just have that's part of this humongous divide we have because people don't want to hear the other side or look to hear the other side. They just want to hear their side, and we've gotten this kind of situation that we're in now, and it's not going to get better, unfortunately. And that's the scariest thing. And him losing would help you feel okay. Maybe we can start stepping towards that. With him winning, it feels like it's just further stepping backwards into that, and it's heartbreaking. It hurts me to my core and bothers me. The common thing I've heard from a lot of people in discussions about, oh well, it is what it is. You got to move on. It's like I get that, and yeah, I have no other choice. Yes, I have to move on,
Right.
but it's still, I still feel shook by the whole thing and feel uncomfortable with what's to come. And I am not an illegal, immigrant here. I am not a Muslim American. I am not African American. I am not a part of the communities that could really suffer if what he has said holds true and he does, and that is even scarier for those people.
Yeah, but you are a human being who has core values that you look to,
Yeah.
basic human decency, things of that nature. That sometimes Trump, with some of the things he's saying, is lacking, and a lot of his supporters are lacking as well. And let's be clear, we've been talking a lot about burying Trump and stuff like that, and you said talking about how being one sided and not wanting to hear the other side. That goes for both sides. Let's be really clear about that, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of Hillary supporters and a lot of anti-Trump that only hear what they want to hear, and they close off any possibility that Trump might actually do a good job. And what really what I'm assuming shook you and what really shook me is not the fact that, all right, we got 4 years to look forward to with Trump. I know he's going to fail. We don't know that he's going to fail, if
Yeah.
we're going to be honest.
Yeah.
It's the fact that this man was even considered.
Yeah.
This man, with his track record, with everything that he's done, with everything that he's said, before and while he was running, still garnered this much support. It's mind-boggling to think that this man with no prior political experience, no prior military experience, this man, has been a blowhard. This man has been in countless trials, multiple bankruptcies.
He's gonna be in another trial next week for fraud for
Yeah, he
Trump
got one
University.
upcoming. He got this victory and possibly that defeat.
Yeah.
The fact that this man was has gotten this far, this man got to the top. He's in the chair. That's what's the most mind-boggling thing about this is how narrow some people can be in their beliefs. How they just believe one certain thing and run with it. They are not open to possibilities that the other possibilities to consider. And this and Trump is a huge representative of that. One of his famous quotes was that he can go into the middle of I think it was
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, yeah, shoot
Yeah.
somebody and not lose any votes.
Yep.
He's not lying.
Yeah.
He's really not lying. If you think about it, there's a lot of people that were going to support him no matter what because there's an agenda there that they will follow to the death and not think about who's on the other side of that coin.
And for people that listen to this, you might have similar views to how we feel. You might live in a more liberal or big city progressive kind of style of thinking, but you have to understand. Like I often listen to NPR, and if you don't listen to NPR in your city or your state, you really should. It's a great source to get all kinds of sides and opinions. But they had a story covering his supporters of his in Pennsylvania and why he won Pennsylvania, and one person who was like covering, maybe a campaign work, I think, for Trump, explaining why he got the votes that he did. Now, while the person did not agree with what he said, he was making the point that if you go into bars and you go into neighborhoods, some of the stuff he says, these are the same things these people are saying. So what he says, while it affected us and bothered us, there was a lot of people who didn't bother, which is a scary thing
Right.
about it.
Right.
That's why he got a large swath of the country that, don't think in a more progressive, accepting way. There's a lot of people like that. And it really, what he said, connected, unfortunately. And those
Yeah.
people are coming to the surface a little bit more, and they have a champion, and it's scary, and that's why what Hillary could not do to offset that is more disappointing. But I mean, let's move on to the. I know you wanted to move on to a major topic in the next coming year, and considering with our new president, it's going to be one of the biggest topics of the next few months. And you wanted to move on and talk about the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare.
Yeah, for sure. Over the last day or two, it's become highly publicized that Trump has a 7-point plan for healthcare reform. One of the big things, if there was one sticking point with Obama that not a lot of people were on board with, is Obamacare. And with Trump, he laid out a 7-point plan on how he's gonna change and improve healthcare. And just to summarize it real quick, the first step is a complete repeal of the Affordable Care Act, which I'm sure you want to touch on because it may seem a little bit unrealistic, especially in a 4-year window. But he wants to basically give the power back to the citizens, and no citizen should be forced to buy health insurance. Second step would be Congress should break down state barriers to allow insurance companies to offer plans in any state, as long as the plan is in compliance with state requirements. Third step would be give people the ability to deduct insurance premium payments from taxes, as businesses are already allowed this deduction. That's a real big sticking point for some people. The fourth step would be establish tax-free health savings accounts, which could become part of an individual's estate and passed on to their heirs without an estate penalty. Additionally, all family members can use this account without penalty. Fifth step would be Trump calls for price transparency from providers and hospital organizations to allow individuals to shop for the best prices on treatments. Just like anything else, people want to shop around and get what's best for them. Sixth step would be Medicaid should be handled on the state level, including incentives to preserve our precious resources. And the seventh would be break down barriers that prevent drug providers of less expensive, safe products from entering the free market. There's a lot of that out there. A lot of people, mail away for prescriptions, get it over the black market. He wants to actually expand on that and make that a realistic possibility for more citizens. So, it's going to be real interesting to see, what sticks on that. What are your thoughts on that, Jay?
I mean, some of those are interesting. Now, I been researching into this topic myself because I'm planning to do a story that'll be on my own personal blog, cheapseatschatter.com, and probably on sportsandpolitics.org. And the topic is covering Obamacare because, you know, there's a two-prong attack coming for Obamacare in 2017 that could really be the death knell of Obamacare. Now I'll get to the second prong of the attack, but let's focus on what Jose's saying here. And now, by researching it, I've found the flaws in certain elements. And now I like you to go back to that 7 point list. And now, what was the first one again?
The first one was a complete repeal of the Affordable Care Act, as no citizens should be forced to buy health insurance.
Now, the interesting thing of that is to repeal Obamacare, he's going to have to get 60 votes minimum in the Senate to repeal that. Now, the Senate is in Republican control. They have the majority.
Yeah.
However, they do not have 60 or 61 seats in the House. So they're
Right.
going to need Democrats, because they have 51 or 52, somewhere around there, seats in the Senate, and they're going to need Democrats to cross the aisle and agree with them on this. Now, not every Democrat agreed with Obamacare when it officially was signed into law, but
Right.
are they going to agree with him on this now? Like, I don't. They might feel the need to stifle that, just like the Republicans stifled so many things during the Obama administration. So that's going to
Oh
be a
yeah.
bit of a problem. Now, what he could do is he could, you know, showcase some of those exact bullets, and by immersing it within Obamacare, which is interesting. Now, what was the second bullet point?
The second bullet point was Congress should break down state barriers to allow insurance companies to offer plans in any state as long as the plan is in compliance with state requirements.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that every state has different laws, so that's going to be tough to do anyway, because by having different prices in different states, it's going to, if it hurts competition on a level, and you can't offer the same kind of things because of state laws. And the fact is, one of the unfortunate things about Obamacare right now is the health insurance industries, miscalculated on a certain level. So there's a lot of states that have insurances pulling out. They're
Yeah.
leaving. There's certain states. There was one state last year, Wyoming, and now there's going to be 5 states in 2017 that are going to have just one provider. So that whole concept, I don't know if that's going to fly anyway, because if states are companies are pulling out, I don't see why barriers being broken down are going to change anything. If they're not making money in that state, they're not going to make money either way. So all these things sound nice, but who knows? And what's the third one?
The third one would be give people the ability to deduct insurance premium payments from taxes, as businesses are already allowed this deduction.
Now, the problem with that is that if you repeal Obamacare, 10 million people or so are not going to have healthcare anymore. And
Right.
the reason they couldn't have healthcare before is because, one, they couldn't afford it, or two, they had previous existing conditions that health insurers did not want to cover. That's why what Obamacare is amazing. It's getting people that are sick that couldn't have healthcare. Now, the biggest problem was when he did that, he assumed or hoped many young people would be involved with it, which hasn't been the case. Now, if you take 10 million people off, you're only going to have a certain amount of people. It's going to go back to the way it was before. The healthy people that have jobs or whatever that can't afford healthcare, they'll get their deductibles, but everybody else will still be in this bad spot. So yeah, that's a nice thing for the people that can get it, but everybody else is going to be screwed. However, if you did that within the framework of Obamacare, that actually sounds like a pretty good thing. If you
Yeah.
can write it off. But
Right.
if it will be counter to what the entire party and he is saying. So it's going to be interesting what they do. Now, what's the fourth one?
The fourth was establish tax-free health savings accounts, which could become part of an individual's estate and passed on to heirs without an estate penalty.
That's great too. And when you read it, if you don't know too much about it, and I didn't know too much about it until I recently looked into it, that's like, oh, that's good. You can get a savings account. These actually have existed for a long time, and a large amount of people already have these things. And there's a lot of people that when Obamacare started, they have these. So he's not
Yeah.
reinventing the wheel here. He would expand on it, but it's something that's already kind of existed. And there's even flaws in it on a certain level too. So, like, for the uninitiated, like, a lot of his misinformed supporters would be, they're reading this and they go, "Oh wow, that sounds fantastic." It's like, no, it's been
Yeah.
around, or it would screw around with other things, or you need Obamacare for it to be better.
Yeah, I've had a couple of jobs where that was actually offered. I'm not sure if it was tax-free or not. I haven't taken advantage of this, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is not something that's new and groundbreaking. It's been around before.
And what's the next one?
The next one would be Trump calls for price transparency from providers and hospital organizations to allow individuals to shop for the best prices on treatments.
I I mean, currently they can shop for whatever they want now. They could. That's the whole point of the marketplace. You can really move around and get it. I mean, let me just like explain the other issue with that's coming in 2017. Premiums for anybody that has Obamacare plans are going to skyrocket in a lot of states. Some states will be
Yeah.
okay, but say for example, a state like I think it's Arizona, the average premium will go up about 115%.
Hmm.
But a place like Indiana, I think, would actually go down 3%. So it really differs in the different places. So, but the Obama administration maintains that you can still shop around and find, plans that are $100 a month, maybe even $75 a month. So having transparency, I don't know if that's going to happen because it hasn't happened before. And good luck with trying to get these lobbyists to be okay with that, and these pharmaceutical industries and the lobbies for hospitals and the medical industry going with that. But you can still, it's not going to change anything. It'll be nice to know prices, and maybe that helps you make a decision, but you can still shop around and get a deal that works for you. The only unfortunate thing, and this is what I'm going to cover in my own story, is that by moving around you may have to change your doctor, and by
Mm,
changing, and that's a difficult thing for some people that may have a health issue, or they're
absolutely.
comfortable, have a good relationship with the doctor they had for years. You have to go to another company, and what's happening is because health insurance companies in 2014 miscalculated so much, and they did not understand how many sick people would sign up for this, of course, but how sick they were, so their prices were too low, and now they have to raise the prices, and that's why premiums are going up. Also, to recoup the money they lost, that's why they're pulling out of certain states, and they're also narrowing their networks. So that forces a person that has to shop around to go and find a different network and a different doctor, and that's a tough thing, and that's a part of the greater issue. And when if people make that decision, I can't change, I want to keep my doctor, and they stay with their person, it also helps the marketplace in general for competition standards, because if you're not going to those lower plans, and insurance companies don't have to give competing rates and try to get your dollar, they're just going to skyrocket and do the same high rates, and nothing's going to change. So, you know, Obamacare is in serious danger in the year
Yeah.
2017, even just not from Trump and the Republicans, just from the plan itself, because what's happening is a lot of the subsidies to help people pay it off, because even that's part of why you can still find a good deal, is there are subsidies for, I think, 80% of the people on the plan, but a lot of things are coming off too, so, a lot of help that you were getting is going to be gone, so it's going to be interesting. What was the last two or three in his 7 point plan?
The last two, number six was Medicaid should be handled on the state level, including incentives to preserve our precious resources, whatever that means. And number seven, break down barriers that prevent drug providers of less expensive, safe products from entering the free market.
Yeah, I mean, the last one's interesting, and that's a very progressive, forward-thinking way. And
Yeah.
I've heard about that, and maybe getting prescriptions from outside the country where they are much more affordable. So that I would be for that. That's a pretty good idea. The other one is having states in charge of Medicaid. That's difficult because what if it's a state that isn't wealthy like New York? Are people going to be
Right.
forced to move? As a person in Mississippi, if Mississippi dictates how they're going to get Medicaid, if they can get Medicaid, we've heard weird stories about possible state ideas for making a person that gets Medicaid or even food stamps, the validity of them needing it by having them take drug tests, or all these kinds of stuff. So you put Medicaid in states' hands. What position are you going to put people in need of health care in by putting the control of their Medicaid, by a lesser financially secure state?
Yeah, it would be yet another thing that's not federally regulated, and while that's a danger with certain things, with this it would get complicated really quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, Obamacare has been really divisive. It's affected a lot of people, some positive, some negatively. I've heard of some people that have actually lost their jobs in the medical field because of Obamacare and had to switch career paths. And on a more personal level, just seeing what my retired parents have, what they were paying previously for healthcare to what they're paying now, and having less options, at least here in the state of Florida, it affects a lot of families in different ways. Um, and this is something that I'm hoping. Trump says a lot of things. He, he,
Understatement.
oh yeah, understatement. He's taken pretty much every stance on every issue, both positive and negative. But if he can, like you said, even if he can work within the confines of Obamacare, because it took Obama basically the entire 2 terms to get this rolling out the way he envisioned it.
Yeah.
Trump has 4 years. He's not guaranteed a second term. He has to be realistic
God,
about.
please don't guarantee him a secretary,
Yeah,
please.
let's not get ahead of ourselves now.
We
I
don't we
don't think
don't
our
need
country can
something
take it.
else repealed like term limits and we get Emperor Trump. Oh my
There
god.
you go. You know what I mean? Let's not put him in the FDR seat. But it's gonna take time. Like you said, this isn't a one-man show. This needs to pass through Congress. It needs to pass through, both the House and the Senate. It needs to. It's gonna take time. So if he can improve the state of healthcare, from what it is now, that's a check on my that's a check mark on my end. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that would be the smartest thing for him to do. I know it would make some of the Republicans happy because that's what they've wanted all along. But if you want to try to really unify people and get some that just truly hate you to soften, not like you, soften their stance a little bit, it would be to keep it around, not repeal it totally. Because how are you going to repeal it and then just have you bet unless you have something really good set up right away to them to jump off very quick, you're going to have millions of people, tens of millions of people all of a sudden without health care. They feel good, they feel secure, they feel they can live a satisfactory life, and now you just screwed them over again. So to grow upon it and better it and take the system and make it more to your liking, whatever it is, but don't eradicate it, I think would be the smarter play by him. But um, smart plays has never been his thing, but somehow he wins anyway. So I guess we'll
hey,
see
he
what
surprised us.
happens.
He surprised us by winning the candidacy. He might
Yeah,
surprise us with actually thinking clearly on this, man.
yeah.
Go figure.
But
But yeah,
what are you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I think before we get to the end here, I think, yeah, I think it'd be nice to make at least one final plea, as to our thoughts on this whole thing. If I can give a final plea, and you can give one too before we move on. My plea is this: look, I did not support this man. I did not support Trump, and frankly, it hurts my heart that he actually came as far and got the candidate, and got the presidency. But he's in now. He's in the seat. And as such, there's only one thing I can ask from President Trump. I want him to prove me wrong. I don't want to say I told you so 4 years from now. That's not going to get me anything. That's not going to get this country anything. I want him to prove me wrong. I want him to do a good job. In his acceptance speech, he said that he wants to be a good president for all Americans. All Americans. That's regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. He wants to be a good president for all Americans. Be that. So that's my plea to him. To his supporters, my plea is don't be the caricature they paint you out to be. Don't be the misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, racist caricatures that you've been portrayed as. You claim not to be that. Prove it. Just let the hate subside. Don't play up to the stereotype. And to the anti-Trumps out there, I understand. Believe me, I get you. This is not the candidate we wanted. This is not the candidate we feel this country needs. But we need to be level-headed about this. This man has done deplorable things, and he should not be in the position he's in. But trying to tear him down and just to be able to have the satisfaction to say, see, this man right here is exactly what we thought him out to be, is not going to leave our country in a better position than it is now. We need to, as he said, as Obama said, as we're all saying, we need to come together as a country and think about what's best for ourselves, for our families, and for the future of this country. Because as of right now, if you look at the ugliness that's going around with the protests, with the hate, with the bigotry, all of this is nonsense that needs to stop, and we need to come together and find a middle ground to where we can come out clear on the other end. That is my plea to this country.
I'm not gonna try to top that. That was excellent. I have nothing to say to that. All I can say is buckle up. It's gonna be a hell of a ride. I am not trying to top that. Uh, that
That's
said,
fact, and it is going to be a bumpy ride for sure.
that said, we'll move into now an earlier recording I did with ATT striking coach Dr. Paul Gavoni, aka Paulie Gloves, and here it is. The fight everybody's talking about, the fight everybody's wondering about. Early thoughts about Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor.
Well, it's very interesting because you really have the same issue that we were just talking about with Wonder Boy and Chiron. You have a counterpuncher fighting a guy that likes to move forward aggressively, and I love Eddie Alvarez. He came to train at the gym a couple times. Super great guy. I mean, this guy's a G. You know, he's great striking, great wrestling, just an all-around great mixed martial artist. And this guy's been in a lot of wars. He's got to overcome the counter striking of McGregor. McGregor's going to do the same thing I was just talking about Wonder Boy. He does it a little bit differently, but basically they both use their reach. They both use shuffling footwork to give the illusion that they are able to be hit, and they counter off of that. And Eddie Alvarez is just a straight warrior. He barrels forward. He throws shorter punches. He throws punches in bunches, and that plays right into a counterpuncher's game. What Eddie needs to do, I believe, is exactly what I said that Tyrone needs to do. I believe that he needs to get McGregor on the cage, and he needs to muscle him around a little bit. He needs to fatigue him. He needs to put him on his back and do some work there. Then maybe his striking is going to be more effective. But if he comes out and he just tries to go balls to the wall again, like looking at Jose Aldo, it's going to be a short night, and it would be a short night, I think, on for McGregor. In terms of winning the fight. But if he can put McGregor on his back, wear him out, grind him, then I think it's, would go Eddie's way. But I'm leaning towards McGregor on this one.
Yeah, I feel stylistically this is totally a favorable matchup for Conor. Just on a basic level, Conor has a bit of a reach advantage by 5 inches. Their height is the same. Conor uses his reach so well. And the thing that worries me about Eddie is that he can be hit. I mean, in his career, there's been several fights in his career he's been put on his butt. Now, he's super tough. He gets off his butt, and he ends up winning most of these fights. But this is a guy whose power looks like a transition as well as he goes up. And now he's not sapping himself body-wise and cutting weight, and he uses his length so well. He counterpunches so well. Now, I think most of these things go against Eddie. The only thing when I was looking and thinking about it is that of the people that Conor has fought, he really hasn't fought a lot of legit, especially at a bigger weight class, like one-punch kind of knockout power or serious power like Eddie Alvarez has, who, looking at his stats in his career, let me just look at this 15 TKOs or KOs, so this is a legitimate guy at a lower weight class who has serious power, and Conor does like to rely on his chin a little more than you'd like, so I give Eddie more than a puncher's chance because he is a talented fighter, but yeah, I'm going to have to go with you and pick Conor here. I mean, what do you think? Do you think he gets a finish in 5 rounds? Can Eddie Alvarez avoid it, and stick in there and not get knocked down 5 rounds? I don't like Eddie Alvarez's wrestling. He has good defensive wrestling, but not offensive wrestling that has ever really been a significant signature in his career to take down a guy like this all the time.
No, he's such a Philly guy, man. Philly guys want to strike, man.
Mm-hmm.
I love Eddie. I love what he brings to the game. Of course, he has a puncher's chance. I think that, unless he gets to McGregor early with one of his big punches, I could see him even getting stopped.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be an exciting fight, I think, as long as it lasts, with the energy that always permeates a Conor crowd. New York contingent, there's going to be a ton of Irish fans there. I think it's going to be such an exciting fight. I just don't know how long it's going to last. But, that being said, Paulie, thank you so much for taking part. Is there anything you want to promote or, social media or any kind of things you just want to get out there for whoever's listening?
Yeah, friend me at Paulie Gloves on Facebook. Follow me at Dr. Paulie Gloves on Twitter, Instagram. Check out my articles on MMA Sucka and Last Word on Sports. But I'm happy to chat with anybody. I'm really excited for this fight this weekend. I'm also really excited that it's finally, we're getting MMA in New York. So Very happy. Also, want to give a shout out to hope people tune in for December 19th. I know a lot of people are betting against them, but my guy Brad Pickett, I guarantee you there's going to be fireworks. This guy's going to be ready for this fight, so really happy about that.
And that was our little conversation I had with Paulie Gloves. His pick on the main event of Eddie Alvarez and Conor McGregor 205. What are your thoughts? The recording we did explain mine. What are your thoughts on that fight, Jose?
Well, I mean, McGregor is a salesman supreme, man. Yeah, I saw some of the pieces that you've been putting out there. You've been doing a hell of a job covering this fight. McGregor knows how to play it up, man. This dude is a supreme showman. And I'm not the biggest McGregor fan, but no, UFC is more interesting with him on top.
Yeah.
Can he pull it out? Can he pull it out again? Who knows? And this is the biggest stage that you can ask for in terms of UFC. I mean, he missed out on UFC 200, but for the longest time, UFC has been trying to break into New York, and here they are. And they got McGregor right on top of the card, leading the way. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues on his path. Because I mean, if he starts, he caught an L to Nate Diaz. He got that back. If he continues to get losses like that, he's going to lose that luster. But if he keeps on his winning ways, he can continue to do things like this and just stay on top, man. It's going to be real interesting to see.
And what's funny is that you mentioned that it's almost better for the sport for him to win. Is Scott Coker, the president of Bellator? I was reading our interview with him recently, which they're also doing a big show with a big fight tonight in Israel. For one, he thought Conor that was his pick to win. But he even said when asked, is it good for the industry if he wins? He even admitted it is. It is probably better off that he wins. Favoritism or not. That's how big of a star he is, and that's how much growth he's bringing. Like, love him or hate him, and what he does and how he goes about things, he helps to make stars by fighting people. I mean, especially if you're one of the people that can win. In within the MMA community, everybody respected Nate Diaz, but nobody really took him as a
Right.
star like his brother. His brother's a little bit different. His brother's just a guy who draws more attention, but no one looked at him as a star. He was looked at as Nick Diaz's brother, who was a pretty good fighter, but whenever he had big fights, he would come fall short. Now this is a guy who's made six figures in his last fight with Conor. So he's a name. So whoever he fights in his next few fights, as long as he doesn't get knocked out in both of them or something like that, he's a name now. So if Eddie Alvarez or whoever maybe eventually does beat Conor, because I don't think it's going to be Eddie, unfortunately. I think this is a bad matchup for him. But whoever can beat him down the road, they're just going to become a star from that. I mean, Chris Weidman's a name in the industry because he was the guy that beat Anderson Silva. Somebody
Right.
that eventually beats John Jones. They're going to be a star too.
Well, whenever he gets his crap together and actually gets back to the octagon.
Yeah. I mean, GSP became a star by being like the likes of Matt Hughes and BJ Penn. And these people were just great fighters. Anderson, BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, these are just great fighters. They're not salesmen like him. They don't bring the attention like him. So, someone really great ends up beating him. It's good for the business and good for the UFC. And, so I'm excited to see it. I'm excited for New York to finally get MMA. I mean, there's some weird things still to be done, and some of the the framework of the amendment in the law to be worked out, so all promotions can come in New York. It's not set up for that right now, but it's exciting to see something in the Garden. They've already
Yeah,
announced
that
the early schedule for next year, and UFC is going to be in Barclays Center in February. You
yeah,
know,
that's a big sticking point right there. Yeah, and we talked about being fellow New Yorkers and how exciting this is for New York. As awesome as the Barclays Center has been for events and as big as it's becoming, it's apropos that the first UFC event in New York City be at the Garden,
of
at the iconic,
course,
center of
yeah.
it all, the Mecca. So this is going to be huge. It's going
And
to
they
be really good to see.
And they could have went to Barclays because in the last 3 to 4 years, Barclay has really become the home for boxing in New York. I mean, the
Yeah.
Garden isn't putting on as much boxing as it used to, especially with big fights. Barclays has been putting on a lot of fights all the time, so they could have went there. That's becoming like more the fight arena recently. But no, the Garden is the Garden. You got to go there. But there's World Series of Fighting. They're planning to put on an event at the Madison Square Garden Theater for New Year's Eve.
Okay.
Hoping to maybe get credentials, and I'll be going to that. And they can. There's arena in Albany. There's a major arena. There's still Nassau Coliseum. They can still do smaller shows over there. Even White Plains has an arena that fits a few thousand. And WWE runs shows in during the year. So I mean, there's tons of money and revenue revenue that can be made, for all kinds of organizations,
Yeah, the
so
same way that the same way that independent wrestling is still thriving in New York,
yeah.
the same could be said for MMA. There
Yeah.
could be a lot of smaller promotions that can make a nice little chunk of
Well,
change.
not yet. That's the only problem. And the way they set up the law is currently a fight promoter has to get uh, insurance policies on all their fighters. They have,
Ah,
and the UFC recently released what the numbers were for what they're paying, and it's about $1,300 per fighter, and for an entire card of fighter, it's costing $40,000. That is chump change for the UFC. It's no problem for the UFC. Bellator can do that, no problem. World Series fight, they're proving it. They're going to do it at the end of the year, and they're probably like the number three promotion in the company. They're not going to be able to do that. I mean, they can do it, but for companies, small companies, like for example, I'm cool with the promoters at New York Fight Exchange, which they're one of the top amateur organizations in New York and has been for a long time, and they would like to have pro-am shows where they can have fights. It's hard for them to drop a few $1,000s along with their other costs to, insure these fighters, and that's not a bad thing to insure the fighters, but that's not anything that's done in any other state. The main reason this happened is because of the corrupt shoddiness of previous New York State Athletic Commission, regimes, and what a shocker, corruption in New York, governmental
oh, go figure.
organizations.
Would
And
have
what
never
happened?
thought.
And what happened was there was a fight. I think maybe 2014. It was in the last 3 or 4 years. There was a fight. A Russian fighter. He got badly hit, took a lot of shots to the head. I think he might have got knocked out. I wish I had the name right now. It'd add more, depth and importance to this. But instead of really doing all their due diligence and medical checking up afterwards, instead of just bring it to the hospital, better safe than sorry. No, you look fine. Here's a cab. See you later. Oh, well, I'm having headaches. I'm having issues with seeing whatever. No, just take a cab. You'll be fine. And he goes home. He ends up having to go to hospital, and the guy ends up in a coma for several months.
Hmm.
He has brain damage from this, and he's suing the New York right now because of this, and because of that event, Cuomo pushed to put this stipulation in the law, and that's it's holding back smaller promotions. And again, if small promotions could make money, that's again further revenue, but they're keeping it at this point. It's just going to be Bellator maybe once a year, UFC a few times a year, and maybe another company once or twice a year, and that's it. And that's a shame.
Yeah. No, and you're right. Yeah, I mean, you're obviously more informed on this than I am, and it's crazy to hear. I mean, like you said, it's for the right reasons,
Yeah.
but it is a huge chunk of change for an independent promotion to drop, not knowing what their gate is going to be. So.
Yeah, I mean, but this was fun podcast. It's
Oh yeah.
a departure from our usual fun talking. There wasn't much laughing and tomfoolery going on, but
If it felt a little bit heavy, it's because we got a huge weight off our shoulders with everything that was going on.
yes, it needed to be discussed. We wanted to,
Yes.
broaden our horizons and, bring a new kind of audience and idea to the show and talk about some things. And we also, we understand it was tough, so we gave you that UFC 205 palate cleanser a little bit, clean it up a little bit, a
Of
little bit
course,
more
got to keep it
light.
light.
But that said, I had a good time. Final thoughts before we hit the road.
Hey, watch UFC 205 this weekend, man. It's gonna be fun, and we'll catch up with you guys soon enough, man.
All right, you know it. Comment the Twitter, Stickman Cinema. Cheap Seats Chatters, our Twitter.
That's
Follow us on
us.
our YouTube channel. Let us know what you think. We hope you enjoyed it. I am Jason Burgos. He is Jose Maldonado. Say bye-bye, Jose.
Bye bye, Jose.
Peace!
Later.